Hey everybody, it's Aaron again, back here in the map editor with the grant view map that we created in the first episode. And so what I want to do today is give you a quick breakdown of how to better work with the city painter and the height painter. So first, what I'm going to do is, this is my favorite thing to do, because when you generate a lot of these height maps, you'll notice a lot of this bumpiness, and personal opinion, it doesn't look very good. So one of the good ways to manage the problem would be to use the flatten tool, and depending on how big the area is and how flat you actually want to make it, I typically want to make them fairly flat, but not necessarily perfectly flat, because it just doesn't look very realistic. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the shape at the 1 so I can get the inner outer density radius thing I was talking about, where the center is very dense but the outside's not. In fact, I maybe want to make it just a little bit smaller. But I want to make sure that it's strong, so the dense part is actually flattening out the land, and so you'll see what I'm talking about. Like, it just starts to look a lot better when you fix a lot of this stuff. You're going to hear me say it a few times, but like all these little tiny bumps and stuff, to me, don't bring the map to life, right? Like, the landscape only needs so much character. After that, it's just too busy. And so for me, when you clean a lot of this stuff up, it looks a ton better. And so now if I want to continue adjusting over here, I'm not going to make it as big. I want to get somewhere a little bit tighter. And this is where it really just depends on how much of this detail that you actually want to manage. Because you can come into these maps and you can really spend quite a bit of time cleaning these things up and making them look a lot better. But to me, in the end, it's worth it. But again, you got to really see where you want to draw the line, because sometimes a bit much, it's just sometimes too much is too much, and the small details that you're working on somewhere over on the edge of the map over here are more than likely not going to get noticed by the player unless you draw them over here with a waypoint or an objective or something. But as you notice as I'm scrolling, same thing. This exact thing I hate over here. But there's a big chunk of mass. I'm not too concerned with the mountains here. When I would come over here to see this type of land mass in real life, I wouldn't expect to see too many mountains. But it's not necessarily true, but it's just the way I feel about this part of the land right here in this map that was generated. Just feel like these mountains and stuff don't really belong too well as a lot of this jagged stuff here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this fairly big, keeping my strength. I'm going to actually raise the shape a bit and just go in and fix a lot of this really quick, and just, to me, make it look a lot better. So I don't want to take it all away. I want to leave some of it there, but I want to just get a lot of that crazy jaggediness gone, because to me it just looked gross. Let's see what that generates. And so while we still have something that's got a little bit of something in here, to me it's really better. And so now if I want to tidy this up, which in being me, I do, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so I can actually fit the cursor in here without taking this little river away. Because I don't want to take that river away, and really just kind of flatten some of that out, and just make it look way better. Like these flat plains right here for me, where I might want to build a city or something like that, that look way better than these, are my happy little trees if I were Bob Ross. So I'm going to tidy all this nonsense up. I want happy little trees everywhere. It just looks a lot better in my opinion. Hopefully you guys get the Bob Ross reference. Oh, I used to watch him all the time growing up. Anyway, so key factor is just how much time you want to put into managing these issues. It's really up to you, but like I said, the big thing that it's going to do is it's really just going to make your map that much better, in my opinion. So the more effort you put into these things, the better. But there's no need, even on these big 200 kilometer by 200 kilometer maps that you generate. I don't think I've spent any more than probably an hour messing and smoothing with terrain and making mountain ranges do things, because again, you're going to always be able to tweak. So there's got to be a certain level of acceptability when it comes to, okay, I'm done with this smoothing of the terrain because I've gotten a vast majority of it. So it's really back to the thing I keep saying, is just how much effort you want to put. Again, the game's less about the terrain, I think, that you're in, and more about what you're doing and your objective. Are you dogfighting? Are you picking people up? Are you dropping them off? Do you have ground targets that you're bombing? So a lot of these minutia of the way the terrain is, I think, aren't the biggest deal in the world, but they can really, ugliness can really destroy it. So find a level of acceptability and move on really quick is honestly what my opinion is, and get to the actual mission editor, because that's where all the real fun is. So here is just the starting point to where you're going to launch all the beautiful creativity that you're going to share with the rest of the community. So you can sit here and watch me flatten terrain all day, but I'm not going to do it. So we'll get into the city painter next, but with the key tips again being, just make sure that you're paying attention to how big your radius is for the area you're working in, how big your shape is, that's a key factor here, and what you're really trying to accomplish again. So small area in the middle, you'll notice, is very dense, versus if I make this thing the whole thing, I can just pretty much flatten the whole thing, and you'll notice these weird plateaus now if you start doing stuff like that too much. And to me, if you start flattening too many things too much and you get that plateau effect, it just starts to look weird. As you'll notice, it looks like there's like two rings in the terrain now. So this is where the light touches can really come into play, and if you kind of want to fix that, I usually use the flatten tool again and make it a bit smaller, take the strength down a bit, and take the shape back up a little bit, and then just run it around these edges like fairly quickly, and you might be able to fix it. Likewise, if it seems like it's not working too well, come over to the lower terrain area, make sure you're holding shift, lower the terrain, and you'll eventually dig down. And then you can always, and this is where the terrain management can get very tedious, you can come back in here and try to smooth and level some of this out so it doesn't look like it was part of your little plateau before. But once you have the effect, as you can see, it's kind of difficult to manage, and so that's why you really have to be careful about your strength attribute with what you're doing, because it can just leave your landscape scarred. And it sucks after you've done a bunch of work and you're like, oh crap, I didn't save. Oh, now I got to spend the time to actually fix this because I lost all that other stuff I wanted to keep. So be careful. This thing's cool if you want to use it a bit. As I mentioned in the other video, I've only really kind of used it for the one map, the runway to pathway, which again, you guys should check out on the Steam Workshop. It's a great map. And to do something very, very specific. For the most part, I just use the raise and lower, and key factor being pay attention to your raise or lower. All right, so city painting, we'll go to one of these beautiful flat areas that I just made a minute ago. And so the city painter works like this, because I was a little confused at first. So I thought I was picking the specific type of town level that I was making, like rural or midtown or suburbs or something. So how the painter mechanism works is I'm going to click and drag really quick and go like this, and you're going to notice that everything's rural because it was just a quick pass through what I was doing. So if everything's set to max, the more city you start to draw there, the bigger things will start to get in that area. And as you'll notice, I'm starting to pop up to huge city here. So it's just repainting the same areas with the paintbrush for the city that'll get you that level of density between these levels in the range slider. Obviously, you can pick a specific two, and you'll stick in between those two. But key warning here when you're painting cities, don't do this, because then your map is going to take forever to load. Like, there's no reason for you to do that. There's probably nothing in your story where you're going to be like, I need a city that's this big and I need 1,000,000 buildings. Like, no, you don't. The only thing that this is going to do is make your map take minutes to load, and whoever picked your map's going to be very, very frustrated that they had to wait that long just because you decided to put 340,000 skyscrapers in your map. So don't do it. I would suggest using towns and buildings sparingly, not to the point where I would get into the object editor and start managing individual buildings, but just don't make massive parts of towns like this. It's not going to add anything to your map. It's not going to do anything. Make more, I guess, strategic looking things. If you wanted to get a little bit on the coast, add a road. Don't do it all a city like I am. And it will give you the effect of that you're wanting to have buildings and towns and space where all that kind of stuff is, where you can put other objectives, but it'll still keep your map loading fairly quickly. So if you do a couple or a few small chunks like this together here, move up, hold shift to move really fast, and then just go to a different part, get a couple other parts up here where you can put objectives. So you still have a good amount of town if you're going to use a map that's 200 by 200, but your map's not going to take 3.5 minutes to load. It's still going to take, I don't know, 15-20 seconds, which is going to be a lot better in the end, because, like I said, you're not adding much value with all that extra city that you're putting in the map. So don't put all that extra city in the map. Anyway, those are kind of the majority of the tips and tricks I wanted to share with managing terrain in cities. Hopefully you guys find that helpful, and we'll see you guys over in episode 3 for something in the mission editor, probably a general overview for the mission editor before we get into any of the specific topics. So we'll see you guys then.